Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Whale from Starhearth Astrology, and I'm here today to talk to you about Pisces season of 2021. So that is the time from when the sun goes into Pisces on February 18th until when it goes into Aries on March 20th. Pisces season, it feels like I can't remember the last month that feels as mellow kind of as this Pisces season. You know, we're leaving Aquarius season with a bang because on the second to last day of Aquarius season, we have the first Saturn-Uranus square. And that's one of the big dramas of the whole year. And it's the first of three. So we're definitely on the tails of something. And so heading into Pisces season, there will be plenty to integrate. We still have Mercury in retrograde. So there's stuff to sort out. I'm not sure that Pisces season will really help us sort out those things, but it will definitely provide a different experience. In some ways, I feel like this Pisces season is a little bit like the island of the Lotus Eaters, if you're familiar with the Odyssey. One of the islands that Odysseus and his men get stuck at is the island of the Lotus Eaters, and they just are hanging out, eating lotus, not thinking about time passing. And so there's this kind of fogged in quality to this, to a large degree because of the presence of Neptune. But there's just going to be this softness. And I think, it's like the Lotus Eaters, not in the sense of like getting drugged up and lost forever, but really this sense of respite, possibly. Now, the transits going on are going to be affecting everyone's charts individually. So you may have an intense month. And that could be because of what is going on into your personal chart. But the kind of mundane skies are fairly mellow, I'm going to say. And there's just not too many aspects going on. Like as you'll see as I get later into the video, it's just not too many things. We see the end of Mercury's retrograde. We've got Venus into Pisces, which is nice. The minor planets change signs, but there's no big sky wars. There's no huge mounting tension that has to diffuse at any point in Pisces season. So I would say just going into it to just, take the rest while you can and really offer yourself spaciousness in this year's month that we spend with the sun in Pisces. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we start Pisces at the very end of the first quarter of the lunar month. So by the second day of Pisces season, we're going to move into the second quarter. So we're going to have that waxing square that the moon makes to the sun, and that is going to increase the drama of the month. So we're just leaving the new moon. We're ripe with all of these ideas and projects that are ready to burst, and we are heading into the second quarter where things will heat up and get busy. And we are separating from the first Saturn-Uranus square. So that's a big deal, right? It's one of the headlines of all of 2021. I have an article about it in the Sopra Sun published this week that you can check out, kind of some of the stuff that I have discovered about past Saturn-Uranus squares. But I think how I'm seeing it in client work and personally and with my friends and my family is everyone hitting a pandemic wall. So everyone kind of reaching the end of the patience of their soul, right? And we're in confined spaces. It's the winter. There's not a lot of places for our frustration to diffuse safely, right? So it may be diffusing not so safely, around our loved ones, which is not, right? Doesn't make the situation better, but there's just not really a place to put it. And so we're feeling really squeezed in between this. It can't go on like this, and there's no end in sight. And that is really how I'm feeling kind of the winch of that Saturn-Uranus square tighten around us. Now, this is just the first one, so we'll see what happens with the second one, which happens in the middle of June. But I've definitely been feeling that, and I'm hoping that separating from it, we will kind of get an ease of that tension, because it was really feeling really hard to breathe in that square. So if you're feeling that way, not alone. Hopefully, as we get into Pisces, things will get a little bit more relaxed. So the main kind of themes of Pisces season, as I said, not a ton, especially compared to the months that we've been having. I mean, we've had one big month after another. We had eclipse season, then we had the Great Conjunction, then we had, January was kind of in between big things, but still it was very busy. We had Mars change signs, and then we had the first Saturn-Uranus square and all of this Aquarius tension with Taurus. And so we've had really a quarter of a year that was just a lot. And then even more than that, we've really had, well, almost a full year of really intense months. And this Pisces season is almost like a blast from the past. Oh, it's kind of calm. There's not too much craziness. There's a potency, but it's not tremendously volatile in the way that we have been having months in the past. So I am so ready for that, and I bet you are too. We do have the sun square the nodes, which means that we are halfway in between eclipse seasons. So we're halfway in between the eclipses that happened at the end of November and mid-December, and the ones that will happen at the end of May and mid-June. So we're kind of halfway in those stories of whatever they started and whatever we're trying to develop from that. We had a south node solar eclipse, which is really clearing space in the Sagittarius area of our chart. So we're kind of, we're at that bend. It's the place, it's called the bend of the nodes, where we switch from being more involved with the past to more looking towards the future. So it may have been wrestling with demons from the past. And now as the sun moves into that square with the nodes and gets closer to the north node rather than the south node, we're looking towards, okay, what is going to fill that space, and being a little bit more organized about what's there so everything's going to fit. We have all of the inner planets changing signs, which is not uncommon, so it's not like a huge deal. Mars is definitely the biggest deal of them because it's the slowest. It will change signs when it's moving in kind of regular motion about every other month, but Venus and Mercury usually change signs every month, and Mercury at least once a month, unless it is in a retrograde cycle. So, so those are interesting, but they're by no means, I almost said astronomical events. They are astronomical. We have Venus into Pisces, which is really nice because that's the sign of her exaltation. And I feel like we could all use a really strong Venus to kind of help soothe our nerves, help us connect with each other. Have that balm of Venus and Pisces. But we'll also have Mars and Gemini, and Mars and Gemini can prompt erratic behavior. Mars is our actions and how we decide what's the right thing to do. And Mars and Gemini can kind of switch back and forth really fast in ways that can be a little bit erratic. And then Mercury into Pisces can can be soothing, but won't help us kind of figure out the way forward. It's more enchanted with the fantasy. And I'll talk about all of those more when we get into the transits for Pisces season, but that's kind of what we're looking for. We begin Pisces season with Mercury retrograde. So it's been retrograde since January 30th. And it will go direct just a couple days into Pisces season. And then it will have to go over again those degrees that it retrograded over. So we have about half of Pisces season, maybe a little bit more, maybe most of it, with Mercury in the post shadow, which means it is integrating the issues that came up over the retrograde. So by the time we're done with Pisces season, we'll definitely be done with that Mercury retrograde piece, but we're still kind of, even though Mercury goes direct, we're still kind of dragging our feet through it a little bit. Here's what it looks like in terms of action. We begin Pisces season the day before the first quarter moon. And so again, just like all the months we've been having, basically every month when I've made these videos, we have the first half of the month is the busier half. The second half is in the dark hemicycle of the moon. We're in the dark moon. It's a little bit more internal, so you can expect that. Bigger headlines in the first part, more seclusion in the second part. We've got a Virgo full moon a week in. We've got a Pisces new moon a week out. And as always, I'll talk about them briefly here, but I do separate videos for all the new moons and the full moons, which you can check out on my channel. Okay, so the last thing that happens while we're still in the first quarter of the lunar month is the sun goes into Pisces. So that happens on the 18th, and then by midday on the 19th, we are in the second quarter of the lunar month. So we have the first quarter moon, which asks us to commit to what is actually going to come into being during this lunar month. What happens that day is that we have another square, and this is really the most important square for the whole month, and one of the only squares we get, even with the inner planets, which is fairly rare. Obviously, the moon, which goes through all the signs within a month, is going to square everything, trine everything, conjoin everything, right? Is going to make every aspect of everything. But in terms of the planets, this is one of the only squares, and that's part of what I think will make this a month that feels more restful, because in contrast, Aquarius season had tons and tons of squares, and so there was just constantly conflict and tension. Pisces season this year doesn't really have a lot of that, except for on the first day. And so when Venus squares Mars, we've got Venus in Aquarius squaring Mars in Taurus. This is really the last of the Aquarius to Taurus squares, not for the year, but with Mars. So we've had all of the planets in Aquarius squaring Mars, and Venus is the last one. So but we get kind of a different story than we had with the previous ones. So Venus shows us what we value, what we want, what we connect with. And Mars is how we go get it. And so there's this tension here. Mars and Taurus wanting to keep going in the direction that it's going, for one thing. And Venus and Aquarius having these kind of lightning insights and thinking that we should be going in a different direction. So there can be a crisis between desire and action. This can also create a crisis in relationships. The Venus being the harmonious principle in relationships, Mars being the conflictual principle. The healthy and fun way to deal with this is sex, but often it looks like fighting. And if one leads to the other, well, hopefully it's only in one direction. But yeah, there can definitely be some tension here. So just watch your words, watch your temper. Yeah, and hopefully it's creating fun sparks rather than volatile ones. But really, if you just, even if it creates the volatility, if you just move through that Venus square to Mars, things get a lot more peaceful afterwards. And then the next day, right, we have Mercury stationing direct. So it stations direct at 11 degrees of Aquarius. And so hopefully things will clear up. Hopefully misunderstandings will get cleared up and we can start moving forward again, and understanding each other a little bit better, and integrate everything that we kind of collected during the huge assembly of planets in Aquarius as they start to dissipate, which they will quickly, right? They already have. The moon moved out and the sun moved into Pisces. So now we still have 4 planets in Aquarius, but they are going to, by the end of Pisces season, we'll only have 2. So so then we have, a few days with nothing but lunar transits until we get to the 24th, and we have Mars trine Pluto. I'm not so nervous about this in terms of personal lives, but I am a little bit nervous about this in terms of global politics, because Mars trine Pluto can quite easily overreact to things. And hopefully in Taurus, it will be overreacting in the form of overly cautious, but Mars is our war planet and Pluto can bring out the big guns. So I'm a little bit nervous about that because it seems like there's a lot of foreign relations, a lot of kind of tenuous situations, politically and globally. So that's a little bit like, hopefully that's going to go okay. Then the next day, we get Venus into Pisces and the sun sextiles Uranus. So little happens in Pisces season that I included all of these sextiles. And honestly, some months I exclude them because there's so much going on. These sextiles, they're nice and they're pleasant, but they are not super important to know about, because they're not such a huge deal. But I added them in because there was fewer things this month. So we've got Venus into Pisces, which is really the headline here because Venus, her favorite sign to be in is Pisces. She's exalted in Pisces, and I think that Venus is exalted in Pisces because she becomes spiritualized in Pisces. So kind of this creative, attractive planet opens up and shares herself universally in Pisces. And so there's a generosity of character, of connection, of creativity in Pisces. And I'm hoping that that will be a sweet, sweet balm to all of the irritation and all of the tension that we have had in the past year. So let's see, Venus will be in Pisces for the rest of Pisces season. Yeah, so she goes into Aries on the 21st of March, but will already be in Aries season by then. So we have sweet Venus in Pisces for the rest of Pisces season. The sun sextiles Uranus, and I kind of like that because we had, a Sun-Uranus square, which kind of changed our plans in brutal ways. This is a little bit more gentle, a little bit more inspiring. So kind of that Uranian insight, that Uranian excitement and electricity can kind of tickle our sun, our sense of self, our sense of purpose, and kind of, stimulate it to fantasize while it's in Pisces. Last year's Pisces season, the ruler was Jupiter, who's in its fall in Capricorn. So in some ways, this is a much nicer Pisces season than we had since last year, or for 2 years. 2 years ago probably was a pretty good one with Jupiter and Sag. This one is not as bad as last year. And so we got that fantasy. We've got Jupiter focusing on the collective, and we're in a lot of us are in positions where we are sacrificing to the collective because of pandemic restrictions. And so hopefully we can kind of use that seclusion to dream up a better world. And I think that this is an aspect that is good for that. Then just a couple days later, we get the Virgo full moon. And that happens early in the morning on Saturday, the 27th. It is a full moon that by degree is trine to Uranus. So again, right, we've got all of the all of the Virgoan power to figure out how to make this work. With the Uranian insight, with the Uranian impulse to change things for the better, with the Uranian knowledge that we have to change things. And so we've got this full moon that's ripening, that's like, okay, how are we doing? What do we need to do? What do we need to let go of? Because the full moon energy is far more about letting go as we start moving into the waning cycle of the moon than it is about kind of the new moon energy, about starting things when we're just leaning into the waxing cycle of the moon. And so I think Uranus is going to really help us cut the cords, whether that's to negative people, negative storylines in our lives. It's really going to help us leave things in the past. And now, right, the other side of that is that some of us are going to be left in the past, and that is going to be really brutal. Yeah. But you live with it. You move on. You just keep going, and time changes things. Okay. Then we're into March. So let's see. We move into March and we have Venus sextile to Uranus, which is pretty fun, usually. That's Venus, what we desire, getting a little booster shot from Uranus, giving us some new insight, turning towards the future, stimulating us to try something new. And the very same day, Mars moves into Gemini. So we've had Mars in Taurus for the past 2 months since January 6th. Where it's in its detriment, it's a little bit hard to get it moving. And once it's moving, it's a little bit hard to stop it. And so we've seen movements like that, right? We saw, the kind of initiating event of Mars into Taurus was the storming of the Capitol. And so, that was a mob that got really charged up at the very last few hours of Mars and Aries, and then started taking territory with Mars and Taurus. Mars in Gemini is going to be much more cerebral. It's going to divide us into factions via cerebral methods. So it is going to be about ideas. It is going to be pointing to differences in the ways that we think about things and the ways that we speak about things. So volatility will be entering in that way. And as I said at the beginning, Mars in Gemini is very erratic. Everyone I know that has Mars in Gemini natally needs to get cardio exercise. Otherwise, they just kind of go crazy. And it needs to be really regular. Otherwise, their behavior tends to just be a little bit bizarre. And Mars in air signs in general is anxious, doesn't really know which way it's going. Anxiety can definitely be a piece of that, and I definitely know about that. I have Mars in Libra. But Mars and Gemini can do the same thing. So, right, we're going to have this Venus sextile to Uranus, these insights about, okay, we're going to move forward in this way. This is what we want. We've connected with something new about that. But then Mars into Gemini can be a little bit confused about about what that actually, how to actually achieve that. And I talked in a video on my Instagram at the first Mars Mercury square about the 3 Mars Mercury squares. And so Mars is in Gemini, and Mercury by the end of Pisces season will be into Pisces. And so they will have a square between Pisces and Gemini that happens, well, really the first day of Aries season on March 20th, I believe. And so there's still some kind of lingering aggression between the two that they're still working on. Then on the 4th, we have Mercury conjoin Jupiter. So Mercury will conjoin Jupiter. And this is actually the 3rd of 3 conjunctions that they've had. So they had one when Mercury was moving forward, one during the retrograde, and then this is a 3rd one. And so it's really just about the ripening of big ideas. Mercury, the student, meets up with Jupiter, the teacher, and Jupiter fills up Mercury with big ideas, and Mercury kind of tantalizes or provokes Jupiter in interesting ways. And so that's, sometimes we can get a little bit, we can say too much with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, right? The dangers are with expanding too quickly, giving too much, saying too much there. I'll post my Virgo full moon video a couple days before the Virgo full moon. And then the moon will form a waning square to the sun on March 5th. And we will be into the 4th quarter, so seeping back into the dark part of the month. I really like to take this week in between that waning square and the new moon to use stuff up at home. So in my family, we don't go to the grocery store at all during that week. We try to use up stuff in the fridge, stuff in the pantry, and just kind of try and clear space. And then we use the time around the new moon to kind of organize things so that we feel all ready for a new lunar month. And you can do that in a lot of ways. You can do it with food, you can do it with taking a break from social media. Just giving yourself some time in the waning part of the lunar cycle and the dark part of the lunar cycle to clear out stuff. It's not a good time to start anything new, but it's a good time to finish up stuff that you don't want to bring into the next lunar month. That same day, we have Sun square to the nodal axis. And that is where the sun reaches the midpoint between the south node and the north node. So between, for shorthand, the past and the future, between our sense of what needs to be let go of and what we are after. Or in a more traditional view, our sense of scarcity and our hunger for abundance. And so that's kind of this midpoint, right, where we can, probably nothing will happen so much as it's really a point for us to drop in and notice how far we've come halfway in between eclipse seasons. Then, right, again, we've got 5 days go by with nothing really but lunar aspects, which is fine, stuff happens in the day-to-day with lunar aspects, but it feels like in the last year that is a big window without big things happening. So on the 10th, we get the sun's annual conjunction with Neptune. Happens at 20 degrees of Pisces. And that can either confuse all the projects or inspire them. So that's a little bit of Neptune's vibe, is I'll make things foggy or I will inspire you. And some of those inspirations and some of those kind of charming visions of Neptune are not real. And some of them become real because the sun conjoins Neptune and the sun creates them. And that inner sun within us, that sense of solar purpose, can download those dreams from Neptune and then find a way to build them. But if you're feeling a little bit confused about where you're headed around March 10th, not to worry. Then on the 12th, Mercury clears the post shadow. So what that means is that Mercury moves beyond the degree that it's stationed retrograde at, back all the way on January 30th. So on January 30th, Mercury stationed retrograde at 28 degrees of Aquarius. And on March 12th, it is going to pass those degrees and move forward onto new territory. So it's in the last little bit of Aquarius before it goes into Pisces a few days later. So that's just kind of wrapping up those little pieces, and we're on to new projects. So it's by then that we should have integrated whatever the issues of Mercury retrograde or the lessons of Mercury retrograde or the gifts of Mercury retrograde. I hope there were gifts. But Mercury clears the post shadow and then we move right into the new moon. So it clears the post shadow and now we have a new moon in Pisces with a Mercury that's no longer tied up. So we have this Pisces new moon deep in the morning of March 13th. And on the same day, we have Venus conjoining Neptune, and they are within less than 3 degrees away from the new moon itself. So this is really a new moon that conjoins Venus conjoining Neptune. And so this is a wacky new moon. You know, new moons plant seeds. I like to point out that seeds get planted in the dark, so we don't necessarily know what they are. They are shrouded in darkness before they sprout and break the surface, which they do at the first quarter moon. And so there can be a little bit of, it's unconscious unless you are doing a spiritual practice and really connected with yourself and really in touch with what your unconscious is calling for. And not that it's your job for your conscious mind to get down there. It's just your job to connect with yourself and resonate with yourself so that you can connect with what is going on inside of you, you know. We all want to move forward, and so we manifest the experiences that are going to prompt us to do that. And with Venus conjoining Neptune, that's really hairy because, right, Venus, our values, what we want, conjoins the wizard Neptune that is full of promise, full of deception, will inspire you with divinity, but can really pull the wool over your eyes. And so my sense is that very few of us will really know what is getting started at this new moon, but it's certainly a potent one. Conjunct Venus, conjunct Neptune. And I'll talk more about it in my Pisces new moon video. On the following Monday, we have Mercury into Pisces. And Mercury into Pisces is a funny time of year. Mercury rules Virgo and is exalted in Virgo. It's the only planet that is exalted in one of the signs of its rulership, which means that Virgo's opposite sign, Pisces, Mercury is in its detriment and in its fall. So Mercury really struggles to do mercurial things in Pisces. So that doesn't mean having Mercury in Pisces is bad. It doesn't mean you'll never have a clear thought in your life. It means that Mercury has a really hard time doing mercurial things. But necessity is the mother of invention. And so often planets in their detriments and in their falls show wildly creative expressions. And Mercury in Pisces is no exception. It is very, very creative in the ways that it communicates. It has a lot of imagination. It can bumble a little bit, can't quite figure out how to get from A to B, but that doesn't mean it doesn't find the most beautiful back roads to get from A to B. So there's a little bit of things are not going to move in a direct way. Mercury into Pisces is in some ways can feel a little bit Mercury retrograde just because it's really hard to be direct with Mercury and Pisces. And so, we just use the same strategies that we use during Mercury retrograde. Be patient, build in flexibility, and let yourself get lost in the moment. Stop and smell the flowers, right? Mercury is dazzled by all of the visions of Pisces. Let yourself be too. We're still in winter. We're still in lockdown. We're still in social distancing. We're still in these moments where time is a little bit suspended. And this is really a time is suspended transit. If you are excessively mercurial, if you've got a lot of stuff in Gemini or in Virgo, this can be a little bit difficult because Mercury is your ruling planet and it struggles in Pisces. So if you're feeling lost, know that it is temporary. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's temporary, but please, please reach out to people. Please reach out to people who can ground you and hold you and make you feel safe, even if it's just with words. Then we have a Sun sextile to Pluto that can cultivate some healthy sense of doubt in where we're going and what we're trying to do. And that's really the last thing we have until the Sun goes into Aries on the 20th. So like I said, a very different kind of month than we've been having. We'll have a Pisces new moon. I also wanted to let you know, thank you if you've made it this far. Please like and share this video if it was helpful for you. I am doing a really cool collaboration with a fiber artist. We are doing a circular weaving workshop in a full moon circle for the Libra full moon on March 28th. So if you want more information about that, you can email me at starhearthastrology@gmail.com. And it's going to be great. We're gonna ship out some weaving kits. You're gonna learn how to make a circular loom and then make a gorgeous weaving, and we're gonna spend time together and talk about a very creative Libra full moon that happens on March 28th. We need you to register by March 20th so that we can ship out the kits. That's a really cool thing. You can also follow my work on my website at starheartastrology.com or my Instagram. And thank you for following along. Have a blessed, a restful, and a more peaceful Pisces season. You deserve it.